My name is Margaret Maggie Thompson, and I am 62 years old. For most of my life I believed my family was strong, loving, and unbreakable. Every Sunday for 38 years we gathered around the same cherry dining table my husband David built with his own hands. It was the heart of our home. The table had tiny scratches from Claire's childhood art projects and burn marks from the night Nathan tried to cook his first steak at 16. Those little imperfections always made me smile because they were reminders of the life we built together. Family dinners were sacred to me. No matter how busy life became, Sunday evenings belonged to us. Claire would tell stories about her classes, Nathan would complain about work, and David would laugh loudly at his own terrible jokes. I believed those moments meant our family would always stay close. But families can hide terrible secrets. Last month Nathan invited us to dinner at his new farmhouse outside the city. He said it was a special Sunday dinner to celebrate the house and introduce Lauren, his new wife, properly. David and I had met her only twice before the wedding. She was quiet, beautiful in a cold way, and always seemed to be watching everyone carefully. The farmhouse looked charming from the outside. White wood siding, a wide porch, and tall oak trees surrounding the property. It reminded me of the kind of place families buy when they want to start a peaceful new chapter. I remember thinking how proud I was of Nathan for building a life for himself. Inside, Lauren greeted us with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dinner will be ready soon," she said. "Nathan is opening the wine." Nathan hugged me tightly when we arrived. Too tightly. I felt his arms linger for a moment longer than normal. "You're going to love tonight, Mom," he said. Something about the way he said it made a small knot form in my stomach, but I ignored it. Mothers are experts at ignoring small warnings when it comes to their children. The dining room table was long and elegant, set with crystal glasses and candles. Lauren had cooked roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread. Everything smelled wonderful. Nathan poured red wine into our glasses. "To family," he said, raising his glass. We all drank. At first everything seemed normal. We talked about the farmhouse renovation, Nathan's construction business, and the weather. Lauren barely spoke, but she kept watching Nathan as if waiting for something. Then David suddenly started coughing. Not a normal cough. A violent, choking cough. I turned toward him just as a wave of dizziness slammed into my head. My fingers went numb. The room tilted. "Nathan, something's wrong," I whispered. My glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. David collapsed beside the table, gasping for air. A dark stain spread across the front of his shirt as he coughed up blood. Panic filled the room, but Nathan didn't move to help. Neither did Lauren. I tried to stand, but my legs refused to work. My body felt like it was shutting down piece by piece. I fell onto the cold kitchen floor, struggling to breathe. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Nathan's footsteps slowly approaching. He knelt beside me. For a moment I thought my son was going to help me. Instead, he leaned close to my ear and whispered calmly, almost gently. "Mom, you should have signed the power of attorney when I asked nicely." The words cut through the fog in my brain. Power of attorney. Nathan had been asking about it for months. He said it would make managing the family business easier as David and I got older. I told him we'd think about it. We never signed anything. I stared at my son's face, trying to understand what was happening. "Nathan, why?" I choked. He sighed like a man dealing with a small inconvenience. "Because the bank is about to take everything," he said quietly. "My company is drowning in debt. But if you and Dad pass away, the insurance money, the property, the accounts, it all transfers to me." My heart felt like it stopped. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son. Behind him, Lauren stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, watching silently. David was still alive, barely. He dragged himself across the floor toward us, leaving a thin trail of blood behind him. His eyes met mine. There was something in them I had never seen before. Guilt. "Maggie," he rasped. Nathan stood up slowly, annoyed. "Dad, just die already," he muttered. David ignored him and grabbed my hand with shaking fingers. "There's something you need to know," he whispered. My vision was fading, but I forced myself to listen. 19 years ago. Claire didn't run away. My chest tightened. Claire. Our beautiful, brilliant daughter who disappeared when she was 19. We spent years telling everyone she ran away after a fight with us. We hired a private investigator to make it look real. We cried in front of neighbors and reporters. But deep inside, I always knew something was wrong. David's voice cracked as he spoke. Nathan killed her. The world stopped. I stared at him, unable to process the words. What? David's grip tightened weakly. She found out he was stealing money from her college fund and from the company accounts. She confronted him in the basement. Tears streamed down his face. He beat her to death with a wrench. My heart shattered. Nathan rolled his eyes like he was bored. Oh my God, Dad, seriously? Now? I looked at him, hoping he would deny it. He didn't. Instead, he shrugged. She shouldn't have threatened to tell you, he said coldly. Claire always thought she was better than me. I felt like I was falling into darkness. David continued, his voice shaking. We covered it up. I told everyone she ran away. We buried her in the old foundation pit behind the workshop. The words stabbed into my soul. You lied to me? I whispered. David sobbed. I was trying to protect our son, our family. Nathan laughed quietly. Yeah, Dad. Great job with that. The kitchen spun around me. For 19 years I mourned a daughter I believed was alive somewhere in the world. But she had been dead all along. Murdered by her own brother. And hidden by her own father. Nathan crouched again beside me, his expression almost amused. You see, Mom, this is why things have to end tonight, he said. Too many secrets. My breathing became shallow. Darkness crept into the edges of my vision. But somewhere inside me, something stronger than fear began to rise. Anger. A mother's anger. With the last strength I had, I grabbed Nathan's sleeve. You will never get away with this, I whispered. He smiled. Actually, I already have. But as he stood up, something unexpected happened. Lauren suddenly stepped forward. Her face had lost all emotion. Nathan, she said quietly, you forgot one thing. Nathan frowned. What? She pulled a small recorder from her pocket. I recorded everything. Nathan's smile disappeared. You what? Lauren looked at me, then at David, and finally back at Nathan. You told me your parents were controlling and abusive, she said. But I started noticing things, the lies, the money problems, the way you talked about Claire. Nathan's face turned pale. So tonight, she continued calmly, I decided to make sure the truth came out. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Police sirens. Nathan's eyes widened. You called the police. Lauren nodded. They're already on their way. For the first time that night, fear appeared on Nathan's face. He looked around wildly, realizing the trap had closed around him. You stupid. He never finished the sentence. The front door burst open and police officers rushed inside. Nathan tried to run, but they tackled him to the ground within seconds. As they handcuffed him, he screamed curses at Lauren, at the officers, at the world. But I barely heard any of it. My vision was fading completely now. The last thing I remember was the sound of paramedics rushing into the kitchen and someone pressing oxygen over my face. And one final thought repeating in my mind. Claire. My daughter. After 19 years of lies, the truth had finally come out. The next thing I remember was the sound of machines. A steady beeping filled the quiet room, slow and rhythmic, like a distant heartbeat reminding me I was still alive. My eyelids felt heavy, but after several tries I finally managed to open them. Bright white lights burned my vision. For a moment I didn't know where I was. Then I smelled disinfectant. Hospital. My throat felt like sandpaper. Tubes were taped to my arm, and an oxygen line rested beneath my nose. Every breath was painful but possible. Alive. A nurse noticed my eyes open and quickly walked over. "Oh good, you're awake," she said gently. "Try not to move too much. You've been through a lot." My mind was still foggy, but pieces of memory started crashing back into place. The farmhouse. The wine. Nathan. Claire. My heart started racing. "My husband," I whispered weakly. The nurse's face softened with sympathy. "He's in surgery right now," she said. "The doctors are doing everything they can." I closed my eyes as pain filled my chest. David had poisoned me, lied to me for 19 years, and protected a murderer, yet part of me still hoped he would survive. Because after 38 years of marriage, love doesn't disappear in a single night. Even when it probably should. A few minutes later, 2 police officers entered the room. One was a tall woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and calm confidence. The other was younger, holding a notebook. "Mrs. Thompson," the woman said, pulling a chair beside my bed. "I'm Detective Harris. I know you're recovering, but we need to ask you a few questions if you're able." My voice barely worked, but I nodded. "Your son Nathan Thompson has been taken into custody," she continued. "We also have a recording provided by Lauren Thompson describing the poisoning and his confession regarding your daughter Claire." Hearing Claire's name made my stomach twist. "Is Lauren okay?" I asked. The detective nodded. "She's safe. She cooperated fully with us." For a moment I stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything. "My daughter. Claire," I whispered. Detective Harris leaned forward slightly. "Your husband told us about the location where she was buried. We've already sent a forensic team to the property." Tears rolled slowly down my cheeks. For 19 years I imagined Claire somewhere far away, maybe angry with us, maybe building a life without us. Now I knew she never got the chance. "I should have known," I said weakly. The detective shook her head gently. "Parents trust their children," she replied. "That's not a crime." But what David and Nathan did was. Over the next 2 days my strength slowly returned. The doctors told me the poison dose had been high but not immediately fatal. Lauren had secretly called emergency services before dinner even started, which meant paramedics were already close by when everything happened. She had suspected Nathan was planning something terrible. And she was right. David survived surgery, but barely. The poison had damaged his lungs and kidneys. He was placed in intensive care under police supervision. Nathan, on the other hand, was charged with multiple crimes: attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement, and now the murder of Claire. The media quickly discovered the story. Reporters filled the hospital entrance. Cameras waited outside day and night. A quiet family secret had exploded into national headlines. Son poisons parents after decades old murder secret. But none of that mattered to me. All I could think about was Claire. 3 days later Detective Harris returned with an update. They had found her. Behind the old workshop foundation, exactly where David described. Forensic teams uncovered human remains wrapped in a rotted blanket beneath several feet of concrete and soil. Dental records confirmed it was Claire. 19 years buried in silence. When the detective told me, something inside me broke completely. I cried for hours. Not quiet tears. The kind that come from deep inside your soul, when grief finally finds its way out after years of being trapped. A week later I was strong enough to sit in a wheelchair and leave the hospital room for the first time. Detective Harris asked if I wanted to see someone. Lauren. She was waiting in a small visitor room downstairs. When I entered, she stood up nervously. Without Nathan's presence, she looked different, less cold, more human. Her eyes were red like she hadn't slept much. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately. I studied her for a long moment. "You saved our lives," I replied quietly. She shook her head. "I should have gone to the police sooner," she said. "Nathan started talking about money and insurance months ago. At first I thought he was just angry about debt, but then he mentioned your power of attorney." Her hands trembled slightly. "That's when I started recording our conversations." I nodded slowly. "You were brave." She looked down. "I married a monster." For a moment neither of us spoke. Finally she asked the question that had probably been haunting her. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. About the poison, the lies, the murder, the broken family. Then I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "You ended it." 2 months later the trial began. The evidence was overwhelming. Lauren's recordings. Financial records showing Nathan stealing millions from the family company. Forensic evidence linking him to Claire's murder. And his own calm confession during the poisoning. Nathan tried to blame everyone else. His lawyer argued stress, financial pressure, family conflict. But the jury didn't believe it. After only 6 hours of deliberation, they returned with the verdict. Guilty on all charges. Nathan Thompson was sentenced to life in prison without parole. When the judge announced the sentence, Nathan finally looked at me. For the first time in his life, he looked small. But I felt nothing. Not anger. Not hatred. Just emptiness. Claire was finally buried properly that spring. Her grave sits beneath a large oak tree in the town cemetery. Every Sunday now, I visit her. Sometimes I bring flowers. Sometimes I just sit there and talk about the life she never got to live. The cherry dining table David built still stands in our old house. But the chairs around it are mostly empty now. 38 years of family dinners ended in one poisoned glass of wine. And the truth we buried for 19 years finally rose back to the surface. Spring slowly turned into summer, and life continued in a strange, quiet way I never imagined it would. After the trial ended and Nathan was sent to prison for the rest of his life, the world seemed to move forward while I remained stuck between the past and the present. Every day I woke up in the same house, walked through the same rooms, and saw reminders of the family I once believed I had. The cherry dining table still stood in the center of the dining room. For weeks after returning home from the hospital, I avoided that room completely. I couldn't bring myself to sit there again. The memories were too heavy. 38 years of laughter, arguments, birthday cakes, and Sunday meals that now felt like scenes from someone else's life. David returned home 3 months later. He looked 20 years older. The poison had permanently damaged his lungs, and he walked slowly with the help of a cane. But the physical weakness wasn't the biggest change. The confident man I married was gone. In his place stood someone crushed under the weight of guilt he had carried for nearly 2 decades. We barely spoke during the first few days. What could you say to the man who helped hide your daughter's murder? Yet what could you say to the husband you had loved for almost 40 years? One evening I found him sitting alone at the dining table, staring at the wood surface. His hand moved slowly across the scratches Claire had made when she was a child, drawing pictures with a pen. "I should have told you the truth," he said quietly. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before answering. "Yes," I replied. His shoulders trembled. "I thought I was protecting our family," he continued. "Nathan was just 17. I panicked. I told myself we could fix him somehow, help him change. But every year that passed made it harder to admit the truth." He wiped tears from his face. "I buried my daughter to save my son." Those words hung in the air between us. And for the first time, I saw clearly how fear and denial had destroyed our family long before that poison dinner ever happened. "I lost Claire 19 years ago," I said softly. "But the worst part is, I didn't even get to mourn her properly." David looked at me with eyes full of regret. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I thought about that for a long time. Forgiveness is a complicated thing. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't undo the damage or bring back the people we lost. But sometimes it's the only way to keep living. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I finally said. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life filled with hatred either. That was the most honest answer I could give. David nodded slowly. And strangely, that small moment of honesty became the first step towards something like peace. Months passed. The media eventually moved on to other stories. Reporters stopped calling. Neighbors stopped whispering when I walked through town. Life, as it always does, continued. Lauren visited me once during that time. She had divorced Nathan immediately after the trial and moved to another city. Before leaving, she came by the house with a small box. Inside were several of Claire's old photographs that Nathan had secretly kept in storage. Pictures of Claire laughing at the beach, studying at the kitchen counter, holding her acceptance letter for college. Seeing her face again after all those years felt like opening a window to the past. I thought you should have these, Lauren said. I hugged her before she left. You gave my daughter justice, I told her. She cried when I said that. A year after the trial, the town held a small memorial service for Claire. It wasn't large, just a few friends from her school days, some neighbors, and the detective who had helped uncover the truth. Detective Harris spoke for a few minutes about how justice sometimes takes time, but the truth eventually finds its way to the surface. When it was my turn to speak, I stood beside Claire's grave beneath the oak tree. For a moment I couldn't say anything. Then I looked at the people gathered around and finally found the words. My daughter was kind, I said. She loved painting, terrible pop music, and helping stray animals. She was stubborn, brave, and always believed that doing the right thing mattered. My voice shook slightly. And 19 years ago, she did the right thing by standing up for the truth. The wind moved softly through the leaves above us. For a long time, our family buried that truth, I continued. But today we don't bury it anymore. Today we remember her. After the service ended, everyone slowly left until I was alone beside the grave. I sat there for a while, watching the sunlight filter through the branches. For the first time in many years, my heart felt a little lighter. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because the truth was finally free. Now every Sunday I follow a new tradition. In the morning I visit Claire's grave with fresh flowers. I sit beneath the oak tree and tell her about the week, about the weather, the garden, the small ordinary things in life she never got to experience. Then in the evening I go home. Sometimes David sits with me at the cherry dining table. Sometimes he doesn't. We don't host big family dinners anymore. Those days are gone forever. But occasionally we share a quiet meal together. No wine. Just silence, honesty, and the fragile understanding that comes after a lifetime of mistakes. The table still carries the same scratches Claire made as a child. And now, instead of hiding the past, I run my fingers across those marks and remember her. Because the truth that destroyed our family also gave my daughter something she had been denied for 19 years. A voice. And a story that will never be buried again.